it's the 42nd day of quarantine and our 9th Leaders Insight. We're really starting to build the community in IsoNation. We're sharing evolving strategies, where we're creating a sense of unity at a time of uncertainty, and we're getting some really good feedback. We're getting some really good feedback from the videos, and every week we're getting some really beneficial and expert insight into how we can help each other to navigate the changing landscape. Today I'm joined by Angie Preece of BCRS Business Loans. Welcome, Angie. How are you today?
Thank you. Great, thank you. Yeah, the sun is shining-ish. Good. It's good.
Excellent. Well, as I said before, it's our 9th Leaders Insight. Quite a flip reverse, really, from your perspective today, because normally we speak to business leaders and directors of owners of businesses or in businesses, talking about how they're navigating the uncertainty. Today, we've got someone in a business consultant that's working with a number of organizations to kind of help create a level of continuity, create that business continuity, and more importantly, ensuring that organizations are able to see themselves through this situation, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in terms of timescales. So thank you very much for being here today. I know I've been trying to get you on for the last couple of weeks. Like everyone, you've been absolutely busy, but thank you for taking the time. And I know that a number of our readers and people watching the video today will get some decent insights. So for anyone that's watching, it's our 9th Leaders Insight, but only our 2nd one on Facebook Live. So we really want you guys to share and like as much as you can, and to kind of help build this robust IsoNation community. But more importantly, if you've got any questions, it'd be great for Angie to kind of field any questions that anyone's got. So we always start the interview off, Angie, by asking people what their OMG moment was, you know, the point where it had gone beyond public and press speculation around Corona, and actually you're thinking, actually this is going to be a bit of a disruption for a while. What was your OMG moment, please, Angie?
Well, if I'm honest, I was having a drink at the time, because if I remember, it was Gold Cup Day, which was a Thursday or a Friday, I think. I was sat in Bottled Wine Bar in Worcester with a few other people, which won't be named, having a few beers, and my phone started going, but it was just the most bizarre questions, and I just thought, is this getting a little bit serious? Also, bearing in mind, we were actually in Bottles because we were due to be at the the cricket ground for an event which had been cancelled. So events were just starting to be cancelled. Started getting a lot of introducers and customers, and then Monday just went crazy with panic, really. That was our existing customers calling us up saying, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, I think that's human nature, isn't it? It's the initial panic reaction. So yeah, the first sort of 3 or 4 days were taken up with just trying to calm people down, really, bit in perspective.
And it's really bizarre, because mine was a Cheltenham moment as well. Mine was just the sheer proliferation of people. And I was thinking, you know what, if we are contagious, we don't know about it, this could really accelerate very quickly. And I think a combination of the number of sporting events and music events and just collections of people, I think that's probably what kind of accelerated it, which is why you can fully understand why we're trying to, you know, bottom that curve at the moment with the current quarantine. 42 days of quarantine, Angie.
Unbelievable.
It's all of our, I'd have said 28, 29, 30, 42 days.
I have to say, I think I am lucky in some ways, because I'm listening to my other colleagues and my friends saying, oh my God, I'm bored and every day's the same. Being so busy, I'm still having weekends. It's great, you know, literally Monday to Friday are crazy, and I'm getting proper weekends. So that I am quite lucky, but we always want the opposite, don't we?
We always want the opposite, and it's quite funny actually, because whenever we, you know, typically British, we always ask people we always say to people, have a lovely weekend on a Friday, and a Monday and a Tuesday we say, how was your weekend? We've stopped asking now, because everyone's day is kind of morph into, it's normally my kids that ask me which day it is. Now my wife's asking me which day it is. It's like, it's ludicrous. But in terms of, so to go back to your point where you said, listen, the Friday, the phone was off the hook. People were just asking, you know, what can we do? What can we do? In terms of the government, how long did it take between the government announcing the C-bills and you being able to kind of fully support? Was that seamless, or was there a bit of a detachment from your perspective supporting the national initiatives?
Yeah, so that was quite interesting. I think most people believed that, well, why wouldn't you? You know, the government stood up and said, this is what's going to be available. And everybody the following day thought it was going to be available. Wouldn't that have been great? But, you know, there I was sat on the sofa, I'm sure with many others as well, saying, just thinking how on earth are we going to put this into practice? And of course, what we had to do was we had to get our procedures, our processes, our legal documents, our underwriting, everything had to change or certainly be modified. So that was really tough, and that went for every organisation as well. There's only 18 of us actually in BCRS. We do punch above our weight, and we've got a great marketing team, but there's actually 18 of us. But in some ways that can be really good because we're really agile and we can move really quickly. So we've been able to get to the stage where we are now. We're getting some great numbers out, and that's been fantastic. And I know the banks are being slammed, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a minute.
Yeah, well, we will come on to it, and it's not about this. This session today is around looking at a great ways for people to capitalise, maximise, and fully utilise some of the support that's clearly been given out there. And you know, some places will be doing it a little bit better than others. But you're right. We'll come on to that. You made a really good point there around you guys getting your house in order in terms of internal controls and process and governance and underwriting to make sure you could support us. What were you seeing from organisations immediately? What were they doing in their businesses to kind of make themselves, if anyone is, Corona ready or COVID-19 ready?
Yeah, so I think after the panic, because I think that was the first thing really, after the panic, some have been able to change their models and the way that they operate. I mean, it's taken time. I think there was, like, you know, we talk about this panic, but I think there's been a good week or two of that because, you know, we're all human beings and we're used to doing what we do the way we do. And that's why we set up our businesses. And we all think that our own businesses are operating the best they can anyway, aren't we? And then when somebody says, oh, you can't do that, oh my God, what am I going to do? So, you know, some people have been a bit more adaptable than others and really have started to think about other ways of doing business. You know, collaborations like this where people can share ideas and think about doing things differently are really, really, really important. Some haven't been able to do that. You know, there will be some big casualties from this. Some are not able to do that. But I think talking to each other, you know, being able to sort of understand and support each other is really important. Some other businesses we're finding, rightly so, have been reducing their staff, or at least been furloughing their staff. And I think that will be interesting as time goes on. What does that look like? You know, how long is that furlough scheme going to last? Ultimately, are people going to have to lay people off? And are they actually just using the furlough scheme at the moment to support their staff, you know, knowing that things might get tougher at the end? Other people are sort of using time wisely by, you know, getting their acts together and just thinking about what will things look like in the future. What else have they done? I think from an advice point of view, I think it's got to be contact your existing lenders that you're dealing with and try and see if you can get them to reduce your payments, put you on interest-only payments. From a personal point of view, think about your mortgage provider. Can you speak to those guys as well? But similarly, don't jump to do that because actually you're probably going to have to pay it back at some time. So if your business is, you know, if you have got some business coming in, if you can manage to do these things, then maybe just think about, you know, keeping them going for as long as you can. But without a doubt, those people that will survive this are those people that have communicated, no question at all, with their lenders, with their suppliers. You know, another piece of advice that's really tough is, you know, be careful, don't pay your suppliers, hold back. But actually we're a chain, aren't we? And if nobody pays anybody, then how are we going to continue as well? So again, a bit of advice on that. Don't bury your head, just speak to people, even if you're paying a bit, so everybody gets a bit. That will be helpful.
I think there's some really, and I've consistently seen some really similar situations when I've been speaking to other people around what they did in the immediacy. And it's very simple. You know, a lot of people were preserving cash. A lot of people were making sure that if there was an ability to be agile, taking that opportunity. I think what the big thing you said there was not burying your head, because the other big thing you said there was communication. Communication is going to be absolutely key, and I think communicating to your supply chain is really important. The other point you made around just be very careful, because I'm on a number of WhatsApp groups with a number of other recruitment owners and other business owners, and some of the guys that are on my Goldman Sachs course. And a lot of people were saying, you know, there's all this support around being able to have payment holidays. And someone made a really good point and said, guys, just got to be really careful. This stuff's got to be paid back. So you're delaying the inevitable. So what you've got to do is have those conversations to kind of take it easy on your cash flow without giving you a false sense of cash in bank, knowing you're going to have to pay it back at some stage. So and what people did, the people that acted very quickly to start with are the people who were able to deal with, because every week something else happened. Every week there was another bombshell. The people that acted really quickly and didn't bury their heads were the people that were able to actually put their business in a situation where they're actually giving themselves the best chance of surviving. Really nice. And it's really nice, actually, Angie, that regardless of them being recruitment conversations or people strategy conversations or lending conversations, they're really consistent. And there's another piece around the well-being which we'll come on to. As business owners, it's quite a stressful environment looking after yourself, the people that work for you, the people, their families, and sometimes we don't look after ourselves enough. And I suspect that's where a lot of people just let it get to them and bury their heads in the sand. But again, from a well-being perspective, we'll talk about that. I think the big question and the big element. I want to say big thank yous to Bethany Durbridge, Mark Luther Thomas, Chris Collinson, Rachel Collinson, Gemma Guscott, thank you very much. They're all checking in. We've got some, we've got some questions there. We'll go back to those questions in a bit. The big thing that has been on everyone's tongues, the tip of their tongues at the moment, from a government support perspective, because it was amazing. The government came in very quickly, and this is not a political program at all. But the government we've got is a government we have, and actually the mindset for everyone I'm speaking to was that they acted very quickly, very swiftly, and with the right intentions in terms of putting a significant amount of money into the economy to help underpin, prop up, and create some level of business continuity, which was amazing. I suspect, like every initiative, there's the ideal and there's the actual. So in terms of the CBILS, because obviously we'll talk a little bit about the bounce back as well. So CBILS, talk to us a little bit about the CBILS, the origination of that, and what the aim of that was from the government.
Well, the aim, without doubt, was it's an interruption loan scheme, and that's exactly what it's for. As you know, there's lots of other available. I won't go into all of them, but when we'll talk about the bounce back, but there's lots of other support and available bits and pieces out there. But this specifically was business interruption. So this really is to support the interruption of your business, whether that means you still need to pay your suppliers, you maybe got a bit of business coming in, so you need to buy some stock, you needed to pay your staff before the furlough money came through. So it's very, very much about business support, and that shouldn't be confused with some of the other information. There is so much information out there, and the thing with these loans as well is to remember that things are changing all the time. You know, even this morning, so CBILS originally for us was between 10, we'll end up to 150,000 for existing customers, 100 for new, and other organisations are similar, but that was from 10,000. You know, as from today, that's changed already. That's from 50,000. Now, the only reason behind that is because we've now got the bounce back loan. So actually, there's no need to have the two of them, and you can't have both anyway. So if you go to the .gov website, you see some more information on that. So yeah, CBILS from our point of view, first point of call should always be your bank with CBILS. They're going to be your lowest rate of interest, and hopefully, in theory, they should be the ones that should be doing it for you. and I know, just touching on the slamming of the bank things, and we are here to be positive. The banks like us have been overwhelmed. And each one of those people is a human being like the rest of us that's going through the same trials and tribulations, trying to work from home. And I know it's really difficult not to get angry with some of those people, when actually what we're angry with is the bigger organisation, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I think the tide's turning. I think people are becoming a lot more understanding. And then hopefully with these bounce back loans to do the stuff up to 50, I think that'll start to take the pressure off some of that CBIL stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? It's really interesting because I think everything, our mindset, the support, is all shifted from where it started to where we are now. Because there has been no constant during this process apart from the level of uncertainty. And so you're right, we're not here to slam the banks. I mean, in terms of something's happened though, because they pledged all this money. There was a stat that came out that they've only released 5 or 10% of it. What do you think was the bottleneck beyond the overwhelming of the system and the processes?
I think, and maybe the bounce back loan will help plug this as well. But I think it's been a few-fold really. I think one is maybe people have been applying for the loan when it's not right for them. To be fair, the main crux of CBILS is that business had to be viable and prove that they were viable as at the end of December 2019. And actually, there's a few businesses out there, I hate to say it, that aren't viable, and they weren't viable beforehand. So to be fair, from a lender's point of view, why would you lend? It's called a gift if you're not going to get it back, isn't it? So it's not a loan. So from a lender's point of view, there's still been underwriting to go through. And whilst the banks and us and other organisations that you'll see on British Business Bank, whilst all of us are trying to do the best thing, there is still underwriting and there is still criteria to meet, and that was the main one. You had to have a positive balance sheet as at the end of December as well, and then the banks would be looking at things like no returned items prior to December. No, they didn't want people to be in time to pay, the same as us really with HMRC. Indeed. We know that that's different now. Of course, we know that's different this year, but what that's been about is taking businesses that were very viable beforehand and making sure that they were the sort of businesses that were going on CBIL. So I think there's been a little bit of misunderstanding about that potentially. And then also I think there's just been the time issue, which has just been thousands and thousands of businesses, going into a funnel and the bottleneck. And it's just been tough for people to, manpower. But I know, I've been speaking to my colleagues in the bank from when I was in the bank as well, and all the banks have been working over the weekend as well. All their staff have been working from home over the weekends, trying to push this stuff through. But again, I'm hoping that bounce back will be a little prayer to that as well.
And I suppose a perfect junction to talk about bounce back. What was the thought behind that, and how is that different to CBILS?
So I think I'm not in the government, but from what I can understand, caveat there, this is to support the smaller SMEs up to 50,000, whereas before it was about proving, I still want to be viable, but proving viability, looking at the background of the business, providing a cash flow forecast. All the banks and us have wanted at least a 6-month cash flow forecast to understand what that might look like. And I know the biggest challenge with that is people saying, I don't know what it will look like. That's true, but let's have a think about it, because actually, how do you know how much you want to borrow? So that was sort of what CBILS was about, what bounce back is about money really quickly. It's about the issues that CBILS has caused, which is this backlog. So it's about getting money out there quickly. Now, as far as I'm aware, although it was due to go live today, I haven't seen anybody shouting that it has gone live today. So I'm not sure. I guess go on British Business Bank or .gov website and have a look, and you can filter through. At the moment, it is only the banks that are providing bounce back loans. We're not doing them. And one other thing to be aware of is to be careful. If you've got a CBILS loan, you can't have a bounce back loan. And I think it's probably going to be the same the other way around as well. So just be careful, because whilst it's great and it's sort of free money, certainly for the first year, and it's going to be at a low rate, if you go and get yourself a bounce back loan, just make sure that you're able to get further borrowing, because at the moment it's seeming like if you have a bounce back loan, you can't then go and have a CBILS loan. So, you know, these are things that everybody needs to have a think about. But I think that's what it's for, is to plug that gap for the smaller business and to make it really, really quick, because right now people are needing the money really, really quickly.
Thank you for explaining that, because it's only a week since Bounce Back's been announced, and like everything, as we say, things are changing weekly. And if it looks like before, it was, you know, there was a furlough scheme was for paid employees. For people who were self-employed, there was no furlough, and they realised very quickly there was a large section of the community that was being supported for actually going out there and trying to earn a crust for themselves, and they actually been penalised. So they moved it, and I suspect that's exactly what the Bounce Back did. Fills a gap for organisations, but more importantly, the quick element. From a business perspective, you know, for cash flow, cash is king. And
absolutely,
we saw Flybe. It took weeks. Like, you don't realise there are some big organisations, there are some small organisations, there are some big organisations that really do live month by month on income. And with that income being gets taken away, it could be a really viable product in a really good market where if you want to buy the product, if the market changes and all of a sudden there's no revenue, you know, you can see businesses go under, and that's what I suspect we don't want to see, because, you know.
No, we don't. And that was coming back to CBILS. That's what CBILS was all about. From, you know, lenders were and are still, rightly so, looking at what does that look like? What does that look like after coronavirus? Is this a business that can bounce back? They've got the bounce back loans. But anyway, you know, can that business come back afterwards, and that can they continue to trade after? You know, we're starting to hear now, I think, that construction is starting to become starting to think about opening again, which is really good stuff. You know, we've got a lot of customers that are coming to us now asking for cash flow support to get them going again, and people are coming back to us again thinking that they had one need, and now they're coming back to us again because things have changed. So I think we'll see more of that, and that's why I think we've got to be careful what loans you jump for, and just check it's not stopping you do something else further down the line.
Yeah, I agree, and I think at this point now, because everyone was just going for CBILS rather than small or large amounts, I think now you can take a bit more of a measured approach and find out exactly what's fit for purpose. I've got a really good question. I've got a really good question from Mark Luther Thomas. He said, I think a lot of businesses still feel in limbo. What do you think the government can do, or what should businesses be doing to make sure they can stay in business? We're now in our 7th week of lockdown and need to be planning rather than taking every day as it comes.
What do I think businesses can do? I think we've got to take ownership. Each business member has got to take ownership, business owner, sorry. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but can't just wait for the government to supply everything for us. What else can they do? I don't know. I think, first of all, we've got to wait and see how this bounce back loan starts to present itself. What does that actually look like for people? You know, to be fair, the government are giving free money for 12 months. Talk about unprecedented, it's crazy. And they're also, I believe the rate's going to be 2.5%. I don't know what else, to be fair, can they do? I think, you know, we're already going to be, our children's grandchildren's aunties, uncles, dogs, grandchildren are going to be paying for this anyway. We know that already. I don't know what else they can do. I think we need to get bounce back started. And I understand there are still gaps. Don't get me wrong. For the self-employed, I understand there are gaps, and I don't know what that looks like right now. What can you do as individuals? I think, like I said, just have a real good think about stripping that business back, you know, cutting costs as much as humanly possible. Speak to anybody that you owe money to. Do not bury your head and start to communicate with people. You know, and if somebody individually wants to talk about their situation, I'm really happy to have that conversation with them and support them, do what I can and point them in the right direction. I've been in finance for 30 years. I'm really happy to do that. But yeah, it's going to be different for everybody.
And it's a really good question. The government's done quite a bit. There has to be some onus. What the government are doing, they're plugging the gap of uncertainty. Actually, as business owners, And from my experience speaking to a number of business owners, what they're doing, and you're right, Mark, you're saying that we need to be planning, and it's difficult to plan. It goes back to your point around cash flow forecasts. You know, we should be, you should have a cash flow forecast.
That's not a reason not to do it, though.
Not at all, I think. I think it's a reason. I think it's a reason to do it. I think planning is great. It's hard to plan when you don't know what's happening. So for me, the big thing is communicating. Big thing is communicating with your supply chains, communicating with suppliers, and communicating with your customers. Finding out what the challenges finding out what their challenges currently are, finding out how they're coping, finding out what. And I think for everyone, particularly for myself, we've looked at a good, a bad, and a really bad scenario from a cash flow forecasting perspective, from a business continuity perspective. And we've got a plan for each one of those. So we've got a plan for if we come out of lockdown in the next 4 weeks. Got a plan if we don't come out for 2 months. We've got a plan if it takes 3 months.
That's a great idea.
And speaking to your supply chain, find out what their plan is, because your business is there to support them. So if you don't know what their plan is, how are you able to support them? If you don't know what their key challenges are, what their pinch points are. So from my perspective, and I'm no business guru, but what I do is I speak to a whole host of business leaders daily. I speak to probably 30 or 40 a week. And when you speak, and I speak to them from PLCs down to 10 people in a business, and everyone the people that are putting themselves in the most robust situation of looking after cash, but as Mark said, are planning. What are they planning for? They're planning for 3 different scenarios, planning for 4 different scenarios, they're planning for 5 different scenarios. And if you think planning for 5 different scenarios is too big, then you need a crystal ball, because unless you've got a crystal ball, you can only plan for the worst, the best, and the in between. I think another thing there really is around network. And I think if anyone is looking to do anything at the moment, I think any business that comes through this will have a really strong network, will have an existing strong network, or really will start thinking about networking, and not the networking that we're talking about, going to networking events, and because we're not able to do that at the moment, is finding out who's in your network that can help, who's in your network that you haven't asked before for help or haven't asked for any advice. Talk to people. If they're on your phone and they're in business, talk to them. If they're on your phone, if they're in your Facebook or LinkedIn network and you've got a number for them or an email, reach out to them and find out.
Everyone's got time.
We've all got. I've never been able to get a hold of as many MDs from a recruitment perspective and a people strategy perspective as I have now. And actually, I'm not interested in talking to anyone about recruitment right now. What I'm interested in is saying, what are you doing? Do you need to restructure? Do you need to benchmark? What are you What are your plans? Because everything's going to be reduced. What's the people strategy that you need to support that? And no one's recruiting at the moment. If anything, they're furloughing or letting people go. So it's about supporting and changing the narrative with your supply chain.
Absolutely. And we're also talking about, about planning. And just to put that in perspective, because that's a big word, isn't it? And that's different for every company. But if you start with your cash flow planning, because as we said, cash is king, get a basic cash flow forecast and plan it. Do it. Start with the next 6 months. And as you say, start with worst case scenario, that nothing's going to happen for 6 months, depending on your industry. What does that look like? Because, wow, once you get that down on a cash flow forecast, that really does start to make sense. And then work back from there. And the conversations that I've had with individuals, it's been really amazing. People coming to me, I need 100,000 or I need 50 or whatever that may be, and then having discussions about the cash flow they produced, and actually, have you spoken to that lender? Have you spoken to your landlord? All those individual things, and actually, perhaps they don't need as much, or we can lend them as much, but they've got some sat in the bank just in case, because, like you say, would it be 3 months, 4 months, or 6 months? But get your cash flow out and do a cash flow forecast.
And don't worry about. And I suspect. I did the same thing, and you do that, and it's like it's a head shaking moment, but actually a head shaking moment, which means your head's above the parapet, not in the sand, and looking at. And every day, all I'm planning is worst case scenario. And so far, so good. And a lot of people are so far so good. Some people are having more challenges depending on what sector you're in. But you're right, construction's coming back. We work quite heavily within civils, construction, and new homes. Civils have been going through the process. A number of those guys are back on site today. A number of the mainstream house builders are back on site today and next Monday. And so, construction underpins a great degree of the economy, I suppose. the big one for me, and I'm not for one second asking you to be a hospitality or retail specialist, but that's the big one for me. That's when we're going to bounce back, because hospitality has taken a battering. It's a big proportion of our GDP, and it's a big proportion of our employers. That's the thing, really. Once that turns, I think then we can get a brighter outlook for everybody.
And I think it's going to look different. You know, we another conversation we've had. It's going to look different for everybody. Even thinking, you know, especially like hospitality and leisure. You know, I think we all think that's going to look really, really different in the future. And that is it's not going to be the government so much. I think it's going to be individuals as well, even when that's lifted. So, yeah, tough for people out there, especially retail and leisure, I think.
Mm-hmm. And that leads us on nicely. I do always ask, what do we think the landscape's going to look like post COVID-19? And you alluded a little bit around hospitality. What else do you think is going to be significant changes across the landscape? And again, not asking you to have a crystal ball, but just from conversations you're having with people in terms of anticipating the future, Angie.
I think everyone should become a hairdresser, or at least train to be a hairdresser. I think we'd all make $1 million. I think that would be pretty good, wouldn't it? The viable businesses, it's sort of repeating what we said, but the viable businesses that have managed to cut their costs, keep their overheads down, done their forecasting, hibernated, whatever, you know, done all of those individual things, will be the businesses that will survive. And of course, that will also be dependent on the industry as well. No doubt about it. Leisure, as we say, and hospitality, you know, your sunbed shops and your tanning salons and your nail salons, etc. They're going to be pretty tough. But then that's what those bounce back loans are for, really. They're for those sort of guys to support them. I think there's a number of businesses that weren't viable that are likely to become liquidations sooner than they perhaps would have been. Some of those that will be teetering. So there will be some casualties, absolutely no doubt about that. And I think January 2021, that's going to be tough when all the deferred taxes and VAT become due.
Indeed.
That's going to be a real tough time again for everybody. So again, when you're thinking about your cash flow forecast, or you're thinking about deferring things or not paying them, just think about that. You know, January is a time when we'll have gone through Christmas, and are you a business that's hopefully, in our other world, is it going to be busy because of Christmas, or is it going to be quiet because of Christmas? Because if you're one of those that's going to be quiet, and then you're hit with all of this in January, you know, are you just defaulting the liquidation for longer? Are you prolonging the pain? And I don't mean that rudely. I'm not saying we should hold our hands up and give up, but I think we also need to recognise that, you know, if there was a business that wasn't great beforehand, this has hit it. Is it a time to, you know, think about doing something different, to be honest? So, I haven't got a crystal ball. And there'll be some great businesses that will go under as well, and that will be really, really sad.
It's a real shame. Yeah, it is a real shame.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you know, it's not doom and gloom. It's a question that's on the tip of everyone's tongue. You know, what will happen? That level of uncertainty opens a whole myriad of questions of ifs, buts, and maybes. But I think the realism is probably the thing that's going to get everyone through. You know, and optimism. We still need optimism. We still need passion, and we still need people really driving their organisations. Just needs to be underwritten, with a vein of realism.
Yeah. And I think that is getting better, as we said. Consider sort of 3-4 weeks ago to where we are now. I think people are getting their act together, but you know, that's human nature, isn't it? You know, if you think about things in your personal life, you're told something, and you sort of go through your curve of, you know, anger, denial, and all that, everything, and eventually you start accepting it and thinking, okay, what can I do about it? And it's been exactly the same for business owners, and I've been involved with talking to them through that whole process, really. But I think people are calming down. People are sort of starting to be able to put numbers around things. And hopefully with the bounce back loans, as well as the other government support, the furlough, the grants, etc., we should start to see a bit more support, rounded support for businesses. Coming through.
No, I agree. We've had a great answer there. And again, you know, I always try to lift the mood around this, but it's a serious subject, and sometimes a serious element of it means that there is going to be a downside. And I think the more information, the more access you have to information and support gives you the best opportunity to make the right decision for your business. And sometimes the right decision for your business might not be a decision you want to make, but actually it may preserve your mentality and your mindset and your mindfulness, but also, there might be an opportunity for you to take some of that cash out of the business into something else. And we've got which leads up quite nicely onto a really good question we've got from Mike Richardson here, which says plan A is for best case scenario. I see that as using a low rate loan to help launch a new business model that will move the business forwards beyond the remainder of the restrictions. So that's a really good question, actually. And what I've thought about as an entrepreneur, I've thought about, is there an opportunity here to utilize some of that support from the government to kind of morph your business into something else? I've got a good friend of mine who's absolutely been working 24/7 supplying hand gel stations, portable hand gel stations, which wasn't their core business, but they have morphed around this opportunity. They've supplied most of all the Nightingale hospitals, a number of trusts, Aldi, Sainsbury's with these products.
Yeah.
Have you seen that elsewhere? It's a great question, by the way, Mike. Thank you. Have you seen that elsewhere where organisations have used a degree of agility to take advantage of some of the new demands in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's twofold, really. First of all, are the loans for that purpose? They're not really. Mm-hmm. The idea of CBILS was it's business interruption loans. So it's an interruption of your business. So it's to keep your business going. Now, that doesn't mean, because we said about being adaptable and thinking about new ideas, it doesn't mean you can't do things differently within that business. But what it's not for is it's not for, in effect, a startup to start. Mm-hmm. Do something again. So that's sort of the difference, really. I've got a really good example of some guys that do sort of partitioning that I've just lent to. We've just done a case study with these guys, actually, and they've actually started working with the NHS and doing more sort of integrated partition wall for the Nightingale hospitals and whatever. So their income has gone up dramatically. Actually, they've done really, really well out of it. I'm just trying to think of some other examples. There's some I've heard of, but there isn't actually anybody else ourselves that we've come across. Oh no, that's not true. Actually, there's a printing guy that I've dealt with that's an existing customer of ours. Again, has come back for more money, and he's supporting with printing the PPE equipment for a lot of the long distance lorry drivers and to the guys that normally have their uniform printed, so some big names that we know, and they're doing a lot of the printing for the PPE equipment as well. So and everybody's got the attitude of wanting to help, which is great. But coming back to your original question about I've got this bright idea, is there something that I can do to support within your own business? Yeah, if you can afford to do that, that's great. But it's not really what the CBILS loans for. It's to support that business so that it's viable still when this pandemic is over.
Yeah, and a great point. It makes a lot of sense. It's there to kind of help create that continuity. It's there to keep business as usual, as opposed to, because there's always an element of risk, and there's an increased element of risk whenever you're looking at new things. And unless you made a really good point there, you did a case study with them, you've got a business plan, you've got some guaranteed orders. I suppose if you've got all three of those, then I suppose someone will have a look at it. It's an extension of your current business and brand. You've got clear demand that's been committed to, and you've done a case study, or you've got a business plan. Then so be it. Okay, so it's in terms of moving forward. So BCRS as a business, I mean, what do you think you'll be doing to support organisations once you get through the CBILS, once you get through the bounce back? What do you think will it be business as usual for you in terms of what you normally support, or what do you think what it will look like from your? Well,
the new usual, I guess, won't it? Whatever that looks like. Yeah, I mean, we've supported businesses across the West Midlands for growth for the last 18 years. And actually, that's what we used to do. Funnily enough, we were here to support businesses to grow and employ. That's what BCRS is all about. And that's why we were started across the whole of the West Midlands. So that's a real shift for us, actually. So we've gone away from growth and employment, which is the last thing we're expecting to see now, actually. So we've changed our business model dramatically. And we've actually moved into, business short-term cash flow business support to get people through through the situation right now. So yes, hopefully, well, surely, I'd like to say, as well as hopefully, what's ultimately going to happen, whatever this looks like, but once our curve changes, in effect, and CBILS and the coronavirus and the effects of that starts to go, and then businesses do start to come out of this and do need support to grow, to employ. We're both here to help people employ, aren't we? To employ people and to get back on their feet, then that's exactly what we will be here for. So it's dramatic change for us. We've had to sort of take our hat off and put it on upside down right now, because we're normally saying, okay, how many jobs do you think you'll create and how much you're going to grow by this year? And actually, none of that is happening right now. But, we've had to change our model a bit. So, yeah, I see us going back to doing exactly what we did before and supporting those businesses to grow. And I think there'll be a long transition period within that, a long transition. And we've always been here to support. We've always fitted in the market just below the banks, so we're here when the banks can't won't. It's the sort of stuff that maybe the banks would like to do, but potentially it's not going through their credit regimes, really.
Okay, excellent. And in terms of, and you put your money where your mouth is, we're asking organisations to be agile to help come through this. You're doing exactly the same thing. Just talk me through some of the numbers of loans that you're looking at and the kind of people you're dealing with day to day, week by week. Because every time I try and ring you, literally, your phone is, you're pretty much 24/7 on this at the moment.
It's been crazy. It's better. It's sort of getting better for us this week, I think, and that's with bounce back loans being announced. I think people are just starting to say, let's have a little bit of a think, let's stop down and let's stop and have a breather and see what that looks like. So, but I think that'll get crazy again within another week or so. Sorry, what was your original question?
Yeah, what kind of numbers you supporting in terms of people you're supporting with applications and acceptances and?
Yeah. So we've lent, bearing in mind our maximum loan is £100,000. We've lent in the month of April. We lent just over £2.5 million pounds, and there's four or five of us out on the road doing that, and that's through CBILS. So obviously that's taken a little bit longer to do. So we're really proud of that. Comparing that to what banks have done, we're so proud. If you don't follow us on LinkedIn, by the way, go and have a look. There's BCRS there, somewhere there.
Excellent. Nice plug there for BCRS. I like it, Angie. But joking apart, listen, this is what we're all about. IsoNation is growing a community, a robust community of business leaders, business professionals to try and get through this. And actually, there's lots of organisations that talk about stuff and don't deliver. That £2.5 million, that's proof that you've been delivering and you've been supporting organisations. And I know, because I've recently been supported, when you see that email that comes through that just says, well, you know what, that's great. My business is, we're nice, we're safe, we're secure, we're ready for this now. We're ready. And to be able to give that level of confidence, not just to business owners, but to members of staff, their extended families, I take my hat off to you guys. I've known about your organisation for a number of years. Actually, it's really nice when stuff like this happens and situations like this happen. It brings to the forefront suppliers in the community that are really making a difference. So massive thank you from me and more importantly from those guys that you supported with over £2.5 million worth of lending in April. As we always close off the interviews, thank you very much today for joining us and for sharing that really valuable insight. It's been a really nice take on the Leaders Insight from not from a business. We've actually got both. We've got you as an organisation, the level of agility that you've created to help support through CBILS, but we've also got your insight speaking to a whole host of business leaders that are struggling to navigate the changing landscape. I always finish the interview with a question saying, we have to be mindful. There's a gift in everything. It's quite hard to see where they are at the front. Hindsight's great for finding out gifts after the event. But what do you think is going to be one of the positives that comes out of this?
I think we might all be a little bit calmer at the end of it. I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? We've all seen the snapshots and videos and things on Facebook, and actually calming down has been great. I think none of us know what the new landscape will look like. I think it'll be a lot calmer talking about that. I think being able to get more people to collaborate and work together is probably, and be just a little bit nicer as just being, I'm sounding a bit woolly here, but God.
No, this is amazing. It's amazing.
It's just so lovely to get, people haven't been so greedy. You know, I'll be out jogging and everybody says hello.
So
you know,
crazy.
It's just
so crazy.
a better feeling. And if we can all just start doing a little bit more, I think we are doing a little bit more of that. I think, I'm not trying to sound all woolly because I know it'll be tough. It's tough. It's really tough out there, and it's tough for businesses, and everybody needs to earn money to survive. I think we've all realised that life can be a bit simpler, and maybe we don't need all the stuff in our lives that we've had before, that we all need a holiday and a haircut. But other than that, I think we've realised that we can live without a lot. So I think for us, it's about and being local. We're doing a lot more things locally now. I posted on Facebook yesterday that I needed some yeast, and I've got somebody that's I can go around and pick it up from that house. It's incredible. You know, and nobody would have done that before. Everyone would have been too busy even to look at it, let alone comment or offer. So I think about we are going to have to buy and support local more than ever when this comes back. You know, we can't sit here moaning that the local butcher disappeared or the local hair salon if we're not going to use them. So we've got to be doing that.
So true. You know what? It's so lovely because everyone's perspective is going to change, and everyone who's been on Leaders Insight has said a similar thing, and it's been around everyone's perspective. Come on, what do we think was the worst thing? I mean, we thought Brexit was bad. We thought Brexit's been bad for the last 3 years. Right, listen, I'll take Brexit back in a heartbeat. We talk about some of the stuff, the trappings of our lifestyles, which we think are great. And the community bit is the big thing. Collaboration is the big thing. And that's what IsoNation's all about. This is what, you know, you talk to the elderly, we talk about the First World, not many people are still around from the First World War, the Second World War. You talk about that spirit, and you don't know, you guys don't know how hard you've had it. We're now experiencing that. We're now experiencing our lack of freedom, our lack of ability to earn income, our lack of ability to be able to see our families. You know, we're seeing that. We're essentially in a bunker now. And actually, when we come out of this, what we don't want to do is for us to be typically human and forget about it. And if we can hold on to 20% of that togetherness, we can hold on to 20% of recognizing that perspective and actually being really grateful for stuff, then I think you're 100% right. We'll be better.
Let's have a conversation in a year and see what it looks like.
Only as long as we're able to have it in bottles. As long as we're able to have it in bottles with a glass of wine. and on that note, I just wanted to say a big thank you from IsoNation to BCRS and Angie Preece. It's been lovely having you as a guest. Been lovely comments that have been coming through. Please like and share and share this video. Anyone that's watched it, share it amongst your business community. Thank you to BCRS for supporting the SME community with all your hard work. And I look forward to catching up with you for that elusive glass of wine when we're able to come out of lockdown, Angie. Yeah?
Me too, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you very much.